Hey Ceramics 2 students, Mrs. New here. Today we're gonna learn how to make a lid on the pottery wheel and also make a spout on the pottery wheel for your teapot project. So we're gonna wheel throw a spout and we're gonna learn how to wheel throw a lid. So at this point, you should have the body of your teapot constructed with your coils. It's all smoothed out, it's ready for the next steps. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is measure the top of your opening of your teapot. So grab a ruler, or you can even do it with like a piece of paper, but figure out about how wide. So mine's coming to the 3 here on my ruler. So I want to make sure that my lid is about, excuse me, 3 inches wide, maybe a little bit shy of that. Now what's cool about making the lid on the wheel is you can always either modify the opening here, so you can like trim this away a little bit, or you can trim the lid a little bit to make things fit and make things work. But when we're looking at the lids, we want to make sure that we're creating a knob for the top. So that's one of the important parts. And your knob can look different than this one. Sometimes they turn out differently. And then for the spout, you want to make sure you have a couple dowels. So you want to have a stick basically. And then for your lumps of clay, not that big, just like, I don't know, about the size of your palm of your hand, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and get I'm using a bat, I'm gonna get it a little bit wet. And for this project, for this, excuse me, the lids and the spouts, you're gonna need to know how to center on the wheel. So if you don't know how to center yet, practice a little bit. You guys, hopefully you kind of know already that you're gonna, dig in with this part of your hand. So I'm pushing in and down and I'm getting centered, okay? So that's the first thing I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna start with the lid. And if your hands are rocking, then you're not centered quite yet. So remember, you're gonna anchor your elbows into your knees. You're gonna kind of, lock your hands into place. And basically I'm just holding my hands still and I'm letting that clay center itself. And you wanna end up with sort of this cow pie shape. So again, my left hand is kind of pushing in, my right hand is kind of doing the karate chop and pushing down. Okay, so now I have this little cow pie, and what I wanna do is measure this. So I'm gonna stop the wheel and I'm gonna measure the diameter. And I looked out, mine's about that 3 inches wide for the lid of my teapot. And again, I can adjust it a little bit this way or that if I need to. So now I'm ready to make the knob. So for the knob, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take both my thumbs and I'm gonna start to dig in, like push in to this part of the clay. Always make sure your hands are wet. And I am gonna go a little bit slower for this part. So basically I'm sort of cupping it with these parts of my fingers, but I'm pushing down with my thumbs. And what I'm hoping to do, don't let it get too dry so it starts to drag. I'm hoping to make like a little knob thing. Okay, so you can see it starting to happen. Another thing I can do is take these fingers and start to pinch that and sort of pull up this little knob shape. Okay, and then I want to think about this top part of the knob. So I can take my sponge, and what I like to do is sort of angle it down. And it kind of just depends on what kind of shape you like, okay? Okay, looking at this, the under part, this part is sort of undercut like this. And then I've got it coming up, it kind of goes down in, and then it comes up, and then I have this little knob, okay? So that would be a really simple, basic lid for your teapot, okay? Now, if it wasn't the right diameter when I started, I would need to adjust that and, figure out what the right diameter was. For this knob, I think I'm just gonna work on it a little bit more. It's a little short, so I'm gonna try to just bring it up one more time. Again, I'm just pinching this clay. Lots of revolutions, little movements with your hands. So I just pinched that a little bit harder, and look how much further up that little knob came. Then I'm gonna use I can use my finger or my thumb and kind of, work on this little top. Now, if you're making a hand-built lid, you have to figure out what your doodad is. This is basically my doodad, or my little knob with the wheel thrown one. If you're hand building, you're gonna make a doodad for the top, okay? So I feel like that's looking pretty good. So for this one, I'm just gonna take off the bat. This is gonna go in a bag. Hopefully I can get my bat off of here. This is gonna go in a bag. I'm not gonna take it off, but let's look at it from the side. Hopefully you can kind of see that, right? Lid, done. Okay, so now let's work on the spout for your teapot. if you're gonna do a wheel thrown spout. All right, so I'm gonna grab a new bat for my wheel head. Give it a minute, push it down a little bit. These bats are a little tight. Hopefully that'll work. And I do want to get it just a tiny bit damp. And I also need to be able to center my clay for this one. So I don't have very much, just a tiny bit. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and center. Start out pretty fast when you're centering. It helps to have some centrifugal force of the clay. If you go too slow, nothing really happens. So pushing down, oh, so bad. Let's try that again. Come on. I gotta make sure my clay sticks to the wheel head, to the bat, okay? So I can feel it sliding around a little bit. There it goes. Okay, so for this one, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of bring it up into a volcano. So hopefully when you learned how to center, you learned how to do this move where you kind of bring it up into a cone and sort of push it back down on itself. That's one way you can kind of center. So I'm gonna bring it up into this little volcano-y shape. It's pretty well centered, maybe not 100%, but what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna drive this dowel down into the center of this volcano. So I have it turning kind of slowly. I'm sort of supporting this with one hand, and I'm slowly pushing this dowel down into the middle until I feel it reach the wheel head or the bat, okay? All right, I think that's as far as it's gonna go. Okay, there it is. So now my job here is I'm gonna pull up some of this clay. I'm gonna use this dowel as kind of a support. So I'm gonna make sure my hands are nice and wet, and I'm gonna hold the dowel with one hand, and with this hand, I'm gonna go pretty slow, and I'm just gonna kind of take some of this clay and start to pull it up. All right, so it's kind of like you're moving up this little bubble of clay up the dowel. Okay, so I do this with my thumb and these fingers, or you could use all 4 of your fingers. Okay, so you can see that was one pull. There's 2 pulls. It kind of depends on how tall you want your spout. I'm gonna go ahead and switch to my sponge now just to get rid of some of those throwing marks, smooth it out a little bit. It kind of depends on how tall or how long you want your spout. The cool thing about making a longer one is that you can cut it up and unassemble it and then reassemble it. And I'm gonna show you how to do that probably on the next video. And that can be kind of fun. So I would say you can always trim it shorter. So make sure it's tall enough. Okay, so I did my sponge. Now I'm gonna switch back to my hands because I can't feel the thickness with my sponge on there. So this allows me to have more, I can feel it a little bit better. Okay, if I hold my fingers in one spot too long, let me just show you what'll happen. If I'm like this, oh, guess what? I'm gonna lose the top of it. It's just gonna come right off there. So be careful about that. Be careful about holding your fingers in the same spot for too long. You do wanna be slowly like moving up the dowel. Okay, so let me just kind of fix that now that I got rid of that one part because it was looking pretty good. Okay, and even if you end up with kind of a short one, that's fine. It still can look really nice on your teapot. So both the lid and the spout, I'm gonna probably throw 1 or 2 spouts so that I have some choice. So I'm probably gonna stop the video and throw another 1 or 2 just so that I have some options, okay? I would put this whole thing in a bag, but before I do that, I'm just gonna slowly pull out the dowel that I used. I'm not gonna wrap it up with the dowel because that would be awkward. And make sure that you're, getting rid of some of that water. So notice there's not a lot of water. It's all smoothed out with my sponge. All right, so that's really quickly how to do the lid and a spout on the wheel. And in the next video, once these are leather hard, I can cut them off the bats or they might just come off. And then I'll show you how you can attach the spout and adjust your lid so that it fits correctly. I would encourage you guys to try this, right? These are just little pieces of clay. As long as you can get them relatively centered, it's pretty easy to do. So give it a try, and in the next video, I'll be showing how to do some hand building of the spouts and the lids as well. All right, guys, let me know when you have questions, and I'll see you later. Okay, bye.